RNC, this Republican National Convention in Tampa, will have the power to decide issues like that. And we can sue and do all we want, but the courts do not get involved normally. They don't get involved. Bill Matheny, what happened in Texas? Never heard who won and what there. I'm going to get you an update on that. By the way, I just posted a blog that'll probably get me in big trouble in the campaign, but it's entitled Who Needs Romney? Just my opinion here, okay? Michael West, Rule 38, can you please address that, which I just did. Roberto Reteg, regardless of state convention rules regarding delegates, I have heard, like you say, that the RNC has the final say. But are there current rules that the delegates unbound? And I don't know the answer to that, how they're currently interpreting that, but I got a good guess with how they will. Brian Warren, where do we plug in going forward to keep the movement going? You know, Brian, listen, this is the thing. This thing is not over, and we've had a great victory, in my humble opinion, that people don't recognize, and here it is. It's a victory in public opinion, in spite of the onslaught against us by the national media and their censorship of almost anything. Imagine, we had a state convention just a couple of weeks ago where bones were broken, where one campaign hired off-duty policemen to arrest our people after they were duly elected, legally and officially elected chairman. They could arrest that man. Unbelievable. None of that got on television. That's pretty compelling videos that we've seen ourselves online. If you haven't seen them, you need to go and see them. You can go to my blog, or you can type in Louisiana State Convention, take a look at what happened there. Woo, hair-raising. But none of it covered on television. But in spite of all of that, in spite of the fact that there are insiders who are benefiting, who are gaming the system and making money off the way it is now, while the rest of us have been dropped into poverty, out of middle class into poverty, in spite of that, 80% of the American people, 80% of the American people now want the Federal Reserve audited. Now, I know I can already hear some of you saying, well, it's going to be a fake audit, and Obama himself will say, yes, we need to audit because, you know, a politician wants to get at the front of the line when there's numbers like 80%. And yes, Romney will say, oh, we need a partial audit. That may happen and that may come. But that does not change the fact that the public opinion has turned. 4 years ago, 74% of the country didn't know what it was. Today, 80% want that transparency. They want to see it audited. This is a big deal. It is a change in public opinion. It doesn't mean that it's the end of corruption, but it does mean that they're going to have to find another way to steal. It does mean that they're going to move, and that's something. That's a start. But the important thing is this. Even if they move, even if they find another way to game the system, another way to take the money, even if that happens, I'm hearing you, Israel, even if that happens, nevertheless, the public opinion is now alert and they're on to them. So that's something, in my opinion, anyway. Kelly Jo Rowland, she says, here's a link, and it's the link for something, I'm not sure, but there it is. Oh, for the Paul Fest. Lori Stevens Mills, Doug, what do you think the implications of the civil suit may be? Will it make a difference? You know, legally, it's like I said, we're up against the whole world here. To me, the biggest difference has been this change in public opinion. That's most encouraging to me. But I don't rule out the lawsuits. My son's a lawyer. Go for it. Chris Aint. Is there any chance that the RNC that we will pull some weight in such a way where we still have a chance to win, or is it for sure a loss for this time around? If you mean win the Republican nomination, They aren't going to let us have it.
Guys, just bear with me a second, okay? I'm going to pause the stream, and I'll be right back.
Okay, Israel, I'm going to turn you down volume-wise so that I can keep going on these other questions on Evanar. The Evanar is holding up this time, which is pretty good. Let's see. I understand. Let's see, Jennifer Nye again. I understand that if Ron Paul does not win and Rand endorsed Mitt, that his chances for success with his own party will be much greater in encouraging the very things we are fighting for. This makes much sense and is something I understand. It is something to be thankful for, not angry with. In such case, that Ron Paul is not our president, all would not be lost. Just curious why Rand did not wait longer to give his endorsement. I don't know. I worked for the Ron Paul presidential campaign. I'm not into that or involved in that. It's a story we may soon find out. Earlier in this campaign, I mentioned the fact that sometimes there are things that are going on in a campaign, you can't talk about them. And there may be something there. There may be something going on in Rand Paul's office we don't know about that. But I'd take Rand Paul over any other U.S. senator in this country. I mean, there's just no comparison in my mind. There's nobody else that speaks up about all of these issues and the power of the federal government and what's going on like Rand, in my humble opinion. I'm proud of what he's done. I don't understand what happened with the endorsement. James Oliver Lott III. Would you consider a Rand Paul VP nomination a huge victory? Well, yeah. I consider the fact that 80% of the country now wants to audit the Fed, I consider that a huge victory. I wrote in my blog tonight, I wrote that I can't get thrilled over Romney. To me, it's like a train is going down the track and it's going 100 miles an hour, and we're headed for a canyon, and the bridge is out, and it's sure disaster, and the GOP is saying, we got to get rid of Obama. He's going 100 miles an hour. Let's put in Romney. He'll only go 95 miles an hour. And I'm thinking, so what? We're still going to crash. We need to stop the train. We need to turn this around. Romney isn't going to reduce 1 cent in federal spending. So am I happy with that? Not a bit. Sorry. But would Rand Paul on a ticket? Yeah, of course it'd be a great victory. Michael West, your train analogy is what we wanted Rand to say. Oh, well, he'll get into that, one thing at a time. Jennifer Nye, James Oliver Lott III, I like your question. Michael West, let's see. James Oliver Lott III, here's his question. It's possible that we could get a Rand Paul VP nominee. Should we focus on getting that? It's out of our hands. We're not gonna be able to decide who the VP is, unfortunately, because if Romney has the majority of the delegates there, if he has enough delegates to win the nomination, then he has enough to pick whoever he wants for VP. There could be a little drama and a little action. There was once before. Remember that in 1956? That was before you were born. But Eisenhower, he was going to pick Nixon the second time, and some of the delegates on the floor of the RNC had a little fun, and we're going to propose some other names, but the nominee usually gets to pick that. Jonathan Woodward, what would be the consequence of mass of people following Joe Scarborough's lead in pre-electing Ron Paul? Hey, I'm for that. Let's do it. Bill Matheny, will Ron run as a third party? I'm going to share with you a little secret. When I alluded earlier tonight, and I talked about it, Israel, earlier in this campaign, that there's some things in the campaign we can't talk about that are not wise to talk about. Well, now we can talk about in a little more depth this third party thing. The third party thing was in many respects a false threat, because many states have laws, sore loser laws, and the law is set up, and I know it can be challenged, and maybe we got the lawyers that would challenge it, so I'm all for it if you can figure out a way of doing this. I just want you to know that many states have what's called sore loser laws, and the way the law reads is that if you run for president on one party, you can't run for president in the same election cycle on another party and be put on the ballot in that state. So what it does is it takes us out of quite a number of states that we would need to be effective in a third-party run. Now, Ron Paul has always known that, and the campaign always knew that. Why didn't we tell everybody? Because if the media is too stupid to figure it out, it was to our advantage not to correct them, because it was our hope that the threat of a third party would make the media a little more respectful and a little more responsive to our campaign and to what we were doing. And we may have gotten some mileage out of that, maybe not, I don't know. So let's see where we are.
Can you hear me now?
I hear you, yeah, Israel.
Excellent. All right, we're ready to go here. We're streaming a new stream live.
All right, good.
Are you ready for a question?
Yeah, shoot it.
Absolutely. Well, this question comes from Dustin Wilcox. It's been thumbs up by a lot of people. And he's asking about the stealth delegates. A lot of us are under the impression that a lot of the Romney delegates are actually Ron Paul delegates in stealth. And we actually know that that is true, at least in some circumstances. We were very hopeful that some of those might be able to stage some sort of an uprising at the convention. Now we're not so excited about that potential. What's happened? Is there absolutely no chance that we're going to have enough stealth delegates to create a broken convention here?
Yeah, it's mathematically beyond a possibility. What's ruined it is the collapse of the Rick Santorum campaign and the Gingrich campaign and their cooperation with the Romney campaigns. If they had stayed in or even not cooperated a little bit longer, we would have had a brokered convention. It would have been something. As far-fetched as everybody knew historically that would be in modern times, we were going to have it. And part of the reason is these stealth delegates. I have to point out that quite a number of our stealth delegates are delegates that would have been Santorum and Gingrich delegates. They're not all Romney. Not all of them are Romney delegates. So.
Okay, so what is the absolute best we can hope for now at the RNC in Tampa?
I don't know. That remains to be seen, and it remains to be seen because the Romney people, as you know, and if you've all seen it, these state delegates have strong-armed us. They've played pretty tough, and so it depends on what they will do at the Republican National Convention. If they let things happen naturally and organically, don't count on it. If they let it happen naturally, we're going to see some dramatic moments, and I wouldn't be surprised if we win some important things on the platform. Most platforms and platform fights don't matter.
Right. And if we do get some platform issues resolved in our direction, does that really mean anything in the long run?
Yes, it does. It does in this case. I was going to say that most platform fights don't matter. This is different because it's different because there's a huge shift taking place in the debate. For years, this debate in this country was left-right, and it was driven by the Cold War and the fear of communism and the power of the Soviet Union. That's where the neocons came when they finally decided left and right, they'd come over to the right on the issue of war. And President Obama has tried to make it, and the Wall Street Occupy movement has tried to make it up or down, rich and poor, the elite rich and the poor. But what we're seeing now with the Ron Paul, we call it revolution. I call it a counter-revolution. I think the revolution happened under George W. Bush when we nationalized the banks and we threw away the Constitution. To me, that was a revolution. We're trying to counter the revolution and bring it back to balanced budgets and U.S. Constitution. But that's language. But the thing that's happening right now, it is the whole paradigm is shifting to in and out. not up or down, not rich or poor, not left or right, left bank of the Sorbonne or the right bank in the palace, but now it's about in or out. And inside are the people who can control the monetary system and are doing so and have done so for years. And they manipulate the economy and they're bleeding the rest of the country. There's nowhere you can put your money today. You can't put it in the stock market. Money's made in the stock market before the stock even appears there. And it's just the rest of us slobs that try to get in there. You can't put it in U.S. savings bond, can't put it in the bank. There's no interest there. It's going backwards in the bank. Can't buy land now. That was the last thing we had. We could own our home. And it's all gone. It's like the Middle Ages. You get a cow. You're a serf and you get a cow. And you should be grateful. And you should say to your kids, you won't believe what life was like before we had this cow. This is wonderful. So they let us have flat screen TVs and the illusion that we're living because we see other people live. But there's an elite group of people who make the money. And it's open now. That's the good news. The good news is your car mechanic knows this now. The good news is when I go into MSNBC, the makeup lady knows all about this. That's the good news. So a lot of people have figured it out, and how that will
Let me ask you some tough questions, though, if I may.
All right.
One question that keeps.
And then right after we're done, Israel, let me go to another one of these on the online here.
We have some
Okay.
questions that are coming in from Facebook, and let me just tell the audience. If you want to type out a question first for Doug, you can do that on Doug Wead's Facebook page. You can go there right now. Go to Facebook, search for Doug Wead. You'll see it says Presidential Historian, and you can leave a question for Doug right there and now. Doug, a lot of people are asking, why did we conduct a money bomb right at the end of the campaign, when surely the campaign and Ron Paul and his staffers would have known full well that we were about to concede that we could not win the nomination and continue a winning campaign. Why did we then go on and have a money bomb? A lot of people are feeling cheated that they put money into something, myself included, that didn't really seem to have any purpose. What is that money now going to be spent for? What was the purpose of that money bomb at that time?
Well, I probably shouldn't be saying this, but we didn't have any money. So if we were going to continue the campaign on to the convention, we needed money to operate. And Israel, our people are getting their bones broken. I mean, you got on the one hand, you've got people saying, you got to stand up for these people. You need to get them legal assistance. You need to get them help. You need to fly people into those state conventions. There's state conventions all over this country. That's a lot of airline tickets and a lot of motel rooms and a lot of people, a handful of people working themselves to death, flying all over the country, trying to stand up for our people who are in the trenches, fighting against abuse. And we can't just abandon those people. So those who wanted to support us and help us could do so. The numbers are not really hidden. They're in plain view. You can see them. You can count them. It's true that the national media, AP, the New York Times, their numbers are way off. They're still reporting we have one delegate in Iowa. But even though their numbers are wrong, it doesn't mean that we would have enough delegates that we could count enough to win the nomination.
Right. A lot of people are wanting Ron Paul to run third party. A lot of us have done a lot of work in trying to build an organization or a structure to prepare for that, such as RonPaulVolunteer.com, which has been built to handle a third-party run grassroots organization. I'm getting the feeling that Ron Paul has no inclination, desire whatsoever to run third party. I know he's absolutely exhausted and resting now. Is there any way we can convince Ron to run third party? Is there any way at all he would do it?
Well, if you had heard me earlier tonight, I already answered that question. But if you had heard me earlier tonight, the answer is We can't. For a long time, we've known that we couldn't. It wasn't in our interest to announce that. If the news media was too stupid to figure it out, there was no reason for us to tell them. But because of the sore loser laws in many states, we wouldn't be on the ballot there. Now, we could sue them and we could go through all of these things, but to get it to happen in time for the election, it wasn't possible. It meant that we would run third party and not even be running in some of the states. Now let me get one question. Let me get one question over here, Israel, and then I'll get right back to you. Hold on.
So just got your question now from the Facebook page.
Okay, Lori Stevens Mills. Do we have 5 states at least to be on the ballot in Tampa? That's up in the air. That's why we're watching every one of these carefully, and and they're fighting us tooth and nail on it too. Mike Tolsford, what are your thoughts? Wait, I just lost it. Where are you, Mike? What are your thoughts on Jesse Benton, friend or foe? I want to say something about the campaign, about both Jesse and John Tate. I've worked with them. They've been very good to me, and they've run a good campaign from the experience I've had. I've been in 7 presidential campaigns, and you want to see a bad campaign, look at Mitt Romney, who won it, who had everything working for him, who gained it, who had the evangelical Christian southern states split up so they weren't into one event as they normally are, and he set it up so they're proportional, so that even though he would lose those states, he would get some delegates that would add to his aggregate total, who could not even take the delegates in his own Massachusetts home state, which he won overwhelmingly because of the money. He had tons of money. If we'd had that kind of money, it'd have been a different ballgame. Who had LDS states moved up earlier so that they could count for him. You compare the Santorum campaign, he couldn't even field delegate slots in Pennsylvania, his own home state, wasn't on the ballot in Virginia, wasn't on the ballot in, neither was Newt Gingrich on the ballot in Virginia. Look how his campaign just absolutely sputtered at the end, and the guy quits after all the delegates he had going for him, and the tremendous sympathy. He had his own network, Fox News Channel, promoting him. So what they did with the little bit they had was very effective from my experience in 7 presidential campaigns. So let's see. What do you got, Israel? You got one there, and I'll come back to this later.
Yeah, Rand Paul's endorsement of Mitt Romney. You've seen the heat he's getting.
Yeah.
You addressed that a little bit yesterday. Did that catch you off guard? Did you know that was coming? And how do you think that's going to affect the liberty movement?
No, I didn't know it was coming. I think that for many of us, this campaign is so important. I mean, it's like I said earlier, Romney. I mean, these people that think this is a big deal between Romney and Obama. I mean, it just, what is it? It's Goldman Sachs or Goldman Sachs. What's the choice? So the disappointment of Ron not having a bigger impact or coming so close and not winning it, that disappointment is, to me, like grief. And there are 5 stages of grief, as you know. The first one is denial, where you don't believe it's true, and the second one is anger, where you're just extremely angry over the loss. And the third one is bargaining, where you try to bargain. If the doctor just told you have cancer, you say, God, if you'll take this cancer away from me, I'll live the rest of my life for you. That's bargaining. And then there's depression, and then is acceptance. So I think that our movement, if you will, is going through grief over coming so close. The real loss, looking back on it, in the first place, let me back up and say this thing isn't over. That's why you see my blogs reporting on everything that happens state by state, because if it is over that we won't get the nomination, it is not over the impact we can have on the platform and the impact we are having in public opinion and education. You stop and think. This event in Tampa will be covered by more international media than any other event in the next few years, with the exception of the World Olympics in London. So the media is going to come from all over the world, and the international media is an echo chamber, and it will help us shame our own national media, which is bought and owned by about 50 people, really, that run it. I think they're going to be ashamed. And I say that because, all the big media Ron Paul does, and if he doesn't do it, Gary or Jesse or John do. So I get the leftover. I get Dutch TV when they come to town, or I get these correspondents from other countries. They love Ron Paul. If the news media in America says, "Oh, Ron Paul's crazy," the news media in other countries think he's the only American that makes any sense. Here's an American saying we're bombing people. There's a joke that there's two ways to be an isolationist. One of them is not to talk to anybody, and the other one is to bomb everybody. And so here's an American who says we should mind our own business and get out of these countries. That resonates. And so there's a lot of things still that are undone that we can still win. And a lot of it has to do with this message war. And remember this, all these battles we're fighting right now, many of them we're fighting because of the way the Republican Party set the rules on the Rules Committee at the RNC 4 years ago. If 4 years from now, Rand Paul has a chance, or some other libertarian or constitutionalist Republican has a chance at the nomination, it could very well be determined by the rules decisions that are made at the RNC in Tampa. It's like recruiting for your football team. You win the season is won in the recruitment. And this next 4 years could be determined by the rules that are established in Tampa. So that's why I'm still working hard for every delegate, stealth or otherwise, we can still get.
Thank you, Doug. Do you think Ron Paul is going to get a speaking position at the RNC? And if he does, is it going to be a prominent one that's going to be on primetime television, or is it just going to be shoved to the side? Or is he not going to get anything at all?
You want my opinion? Nobody knows, of course, yet, because it hadn't been decided. But my opinion is that right now they're not going to give him anything. A few years ago with McCain, the same people who are running the McCain campaign and the Dole campaign are running the Romney campaign, and they're I don't know how to describe it. They aren't Reagan-esque. The Reagan campaign, even the Herbert Walker campaign of '88, was very open. It brought people in. It was not frightened and threatened and petty. If there were new people, they wanted them in because that's how we're going to win. The philosophy of these men that run the McCain and even to a lesser extent some of them that ran George W. Bush's campaign were very exclusive, threatened, petty people. They didn't want anybody new around. So what they did last time with McCain is that McCain promised all these other candidates they'd get a speech. Then they ended up dictating what the speech would be, and they recorded it into a movie, and then they made sure that the movie wasn't really showed on national television. So that's what tends to happen. Ron Paul is different. If the Romney people were smart, and I don't really care if they're smart. If they want to be dumb, that's fine with me. But if they were smart, they would realize that this is not 1992 where Pat Robertson and Pat Buchanan were represented the evangelical and the Catholic movement conservative base of their party. Ron Paul beats Obama, not with Republicans. He beats them with independents, with Hispanics, with youth. We beat Obama head to head, but we only carry 17% of the Republican votes. That's exactly who they should be reaching out to. Will they be smart enough to do that? I don't think so.
We actually have this is probably breaking news from the Flix people, but we actually have a show planned where we, over the next 4 years, are going to be reaching out to the conservative Christian section of the right so that we can try and educate them about what libertarian politics is all about. Doug, a question that keeps coming up, an interesting question. Has Ron Paul received death threats, and is that the reason that he conceded in the email that he sent out?
Are you Israel, reading these questions off of the Facebook thing, or getting them on your own stream too?
We have them on our own Flick stream.
Okay, let me get one here and then go back to that one, okay?
Absolutely.
I'm not avoiding that one, but Kyle Letterman, how do we ever expect to win when we can see the fraud?
That's fine. Got a little bit of a break up. You just go ahead. I'm sure hopefully the spirit will catch up.
Okay, when we can see the fraud all around us, yet let them trample us. We can pretend we are stealthily putting people into positions, but the elite aren't blind. We can never win with the current system, as they can just steal it from Rand in 2016, just as they did with Ron this year. They can always fix elections, so why are we wasting our time trying to play nice? We need to bring the fraud to the forefront of America and expose the facade of voting system we have in this country. Thoughts, Mr. Wead? Well, I agree with you, and I'm trying to do that in my blog. And anybody that's got anything, send it to me, and I'll try my best to get it up there and get it online. Is that you ringing on the other end, Israel? Anyway, we will try. We're trying. Let me take another one here while we're... Camden Neves says, fraud is very serious. It is indeed. Joel Dyer, well said, Kyle. Camden Neves, JT. They are smart enough to support Ron Paul because they know he will end their gravy train. Let's see. They're smart enough not to support Ron Paul because they'll know it. That's right. Let's see. Nick Socaleone. Will Ron Paul continue giving speeches after the election? I don't know. Nicholas Feely. Any headway on Romney's subgate yet? Here's Israel back. Let me get him back on the line here. Okay, I got you. You back on? Yeah, let's answer that security question. I don't know, but I can guarantee you that that would not impact Ron Paul. If Ron Paul was afraid for his life, he wouldn't have run for president. And if Ron Paul was afraid for his life, he would have taken the Secret Service detail that they take the room above you and beneath you, on both sides of you, the whole thing. And he is a very brave.
Would you click the video button on your Skype? We don't have a video feed from you right now.
I don't? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
That's all right.
Yeah, I'll get that going. All right, here we go. Hey, I'm back. This is to the Ron Paul Flex group. Yeah, we were talking about Ron Paul. He's a very brave man, a real gentleman. I talked to him just a couple days ago, and but I can promise you death threats would not influence him out of the race. That's ridiculous. He would jump in with both feet. But do they get death threats? I wouldn't be surprised. That's been my experience in public life. So, but no, that would not have driven him from the race at all.
When you spoke with Ron a few days ago, did he have a message for us at all?
He's a real gentleman, and he's concerned by the vicious nature of the campaign. It hurts him to see our people hurt, broken bones, and to see our people abused and suffering. It hurts him, and he loves this country, and he's a gentle soul. And he's a very unusual person for being the one to stand up to all this. You know, some of you online, you can criticize Ron Paul and say you would do it differently, but boy, There's nobody else. There's nobody else. That it's not like there's a group of 20 or 30 congressmen that won't go on the junkets, that won't participate in the congressional plan, retirement plan and pension plan, and he's one of a kind. He's a very unusual person, and I'm very proud of him. I'm very proud to serve him. I've said many times I sleep easy. I lay my head down on the pillow and I sleep good. I know I'm working for someone who's honest, and he's not perfect. If I read about some problem in his life or some mistake he's made, I wouldn't be surprised. That's human nature. But he's a better man than me. He's done a better job than I would have done, given the same set of circumstances. He's a person for our time, unique for our time. So,
but I'm not just going to ask you softball questions here. So, Ron Paul sat down with Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke about 3 weeks ago and had breakfast with him. And the media asked Ron Paul, coming out of that meeting, what they talked about, and he refused to give any response, saying it was just off the record. It wasn't long after that Ron Paul conceded in that email. Is there a connection there? Has Ron Paul perhaps been offered the Secretary of the Treasury post, and that is what he is waiting for now? And if he was offered that, would he take it?
No, I don't think so. I mean, anything's possible, but I would be very surprised if he was offered that, because in presidential politics, you don't announce who your cabinet officers are and who you're going to invite into your cabinet at this juncture. It's too early for that. You have committees and teams of people who are going through lists, and you're looking at them, but the final decision is going to be in the hands of the nominee, and it's not made right away. And it wouldn't be like that. And it wouldn't work with Ron Paul. You can't buy Ron Paul. I mean, there's just no way. So no, I don't think so at all. And I don't think it's related to the audit the Fed thing. I think Ron is seeing the culmination of his whole life. He saw something that other people didn't see. You know, who was it? Was it Schopenhauer who said that talent is hitting a target that no one else can hit? Genius is hitting a target that no one else can see. And Ron Paul was hitting a target that very few people could see. Now, some of you could, some of you in the Liberty Movement, but I'm ashamed to say I couldn't see it. And so, no, there's no way he's going to have suffered what he's suffered, and that the Federal Reserve chairman could buy him. Nope. Yeah, Corey, you got something?
Yeah, there's quite a few questions asking about Gary Johnson.
Gary Johnson, okay. Corey's keeping me honest here. She says there's a lot of questions about Gary Johnson, and I see some of these. Paul Gaynor, or Goainer, and let's see, Lori Stevens Mills. Quite a few of them are asking about Gary Johnson. Okay, they're moving so fast. Lori Stevens Mills says Gary Johnson will not win. I'm voting Paul no matter what. Somebody else here says, Jay, go Hawk Johnson somewhere else, please. And yeah.
Yeah, one says, Doug, if Ron Paul does not win the nomination, would you encourage him to endorse Gary Johnson?
I don't know. I'm not there yet. I'm not. I'm focused on. I'm not a big Romney fan. I'll put it that way. But I'm focused on getting delegates in there and influencing the convention. Camden Neves says, Doug, please do more interviews to the mainstream media. Your style and sarcasm. You think I'm being sarcastic, Cam? Creates a very convincing case. No one does it better. Maybe you're right, Camden. That's why they don't have me on. Unfortunately, I can't just show up and say I want on your TV show. I don't think they want me on TV anymore. Tony Guerrero says, "Why would you fight to this point to dismay for not wanting?" Wait a second. There's so many coming here. I can't. This is skipping down. For not wanting to be unpolite, as mentioned. History has proven that no matter how polite, sometimes you have to push to get your means. Yeah, I'm sure, Tony, I think it depends. This is Tony Guerra. I think it depends on the degree. And so I'd have to know the point of reference. Yeah, when you see some of these hot videos that we show, and if you send them to me, I'll show them. That turns your stomach. You want to fight back and should fight back to defend yourself. And growing up in a Judeo-Christian home, in a Assemblies of God home, there's a verse in Galatians in the Bible that says, "Let not your good be spoken of as evil," which means you have a responsibility to not only do the right thing, but to defend it when you do it. And so I believe that, but do we have some people on our side who are impolite? Yes, we do. Yes, we do. And Dr. Paul is just making this Gandhian case that we should be strong, but to do it with kindness. Okay, Ellen Smith, what kind of stances should we focus on promoting at the RNC that the Republican base will listen to? Well, we'll all get our marching orders, and I'm sure it'll relate to audit the Fed and Patriot Act, all the rest of this stuff, protecting the freedom of the internet, which is our lifeblood, and the Rules Committee, which will decide how the RNC will how we'll look the next cycle. Uh-oh. I'm losing my voice here. Rickard Benato. Ron Paul still has a legit chance. Why is Rand saying otherwise? Well, Ricky, if you can show me how, I would sure. I'm for you leading the way because I would love that. And we're fighting as if he does. We're counting every delegate and fighting for every delegate and working extremely hard. Late into the night, every night. So
there's
so
one more
now
that
we've kind of come to the
everyone's
end of this.
asking about.
What is the next move forward? Even after the convention, what should we as the Liberty Movement be doing now?
Hold on just a second, Israel. Go ahead, Corey.
What the question is, Mr. Wead, what do you think about the lawsuit that has been filed by the Election Fraud Remedy against the RNC?
I don't know. I don't understand the law, so I really don't know, and I'm not involved in it. The campaign, I've heard people in the campaign talking about it and whether it helps and hurts, and they have their opinions. I don't really have an opinion. I'm for everything we can do, leave no stone unturned, but I don't know enough about it, frankly. I'd have to look into what that's costing us in terms of the other side. I'd have to look into, are we going to lose more than we gain from it? In other words, if we force something to happen in one state, will it hurt us in another? And then, quite frankly, as I mentioned earlier, the courts, they don't touch it. They throw it right back into the party. So whoever gets the majority of the delegates and wins the nomination can control the outcome, really. And you can sue, but good luck. Unfortunately. And I think it's a real flaw in the system. It's a constitutional flaw, in my opinion, but I don't know what we can do about it right now. We're learning that there's a lot of people in this country that don't take the Constitution very seriously. Okay, you were saying, Israel, people are asking, where do we go from here?
What do we do now?
Well, we have a lot of options because of public opinion. because of that 80% figure that I just mentioned to you earlier that want to audit the Fed. So I'm not the leader of the movement. Some of you watching and participating are real leaders. I read your books, I read your blogs, I read your comments on the Ron Paul Forum, and some of you will take the lead. I will look to Dr. Paul for guidance on where we go from here and what we do from here. But I'm very excited because there has been an awakening and people are upset. So I don't think this is over by any stretch of the means of the imagination. What else are you seeing there, Corey?
I'm asking, people are now asking, what are you going to be doing after the campaign?
Me personally, I don't know. I suppose I'll go into depression.
Don, are you going to write a book on all this? You've got all the facts from all over the country. You must be compiling this into a book even right now.
Well, yeah, maybe I will if they give me permission. If it's okay with Dr. Paul, maybe I'll do that. But as I've said, I don't think this battle is over. It's just begun. We've just got the little tip of the iceberg, and it's so amazing to me because, yeah, Mark Twain says we're all ignorant on different subjects, and I was very ignorant about monetary policy and what was going on in this country. And I ask you, those of you in the audience who are part of this movement, I ask you to be patient with others because you've got logic on your side, you've got the truth on your side. Hang in there and be patient. I didn't see this or understand it. I was working right in the middle of it. I was working in the Bush White House as special assistant to the president. And if you'd have tried to talk to me then about how corrupt things were in the monetary system and the lobbyists and how everybody was getting money and the money was going from the drained from the poor and the middle class to the rich, I wouldn't have believed you. But because Dr. Paul, here's another point. You know, we're criticizing Rand for his endorsement of Romney, but because Dr. Paul ran in the Republican Party, I never would have seen him or ever heard his message, except he ran as a Republican candidate, got in the debates, and I saw him. And in the little area that I had some expertise on Iraq and war, he was right. And it shocked me to hear somebody that was right. I felt like I was the only person in the world who knew about that. I heard him and thought, who is this guy? How did he know that? And how did he have the nerve to talk about it? Wait a minute. And that got me going. Then, of course, I got involved. And I thought, well, he's got to change his position on drugs and decriminalization of drugs, and he's got to change his position. And I'm going through all this, but I've changed my position, and he's had quite an influence on me, and I have to admit. But he never would have had an influence at all if he'd have listened to the critics who said that he was compromising by running as a Republican. And he's helped change America and maybe the world by running as a Republican. So keep that in mind when you think of Rand Paul endorsing Romney, I think of Richard Nixon endorsing Goldwater. This is what the neocons do. This is what a liberal Republican did. In 1964, when Goldwater won the nomination, and just like today, taking over, transforming the GOP and the Republican Party, Richard Nixon, who disagreed with Goldwater and all these policies, he was a liberal Republican, he got in there and he campaigned for Goldwater because he was the nominee. So he campaigned for him, he went all over the country and defended him and gave speeches defending him, and 4 years later he was elected the President of the United States. That's politics. That's not ethics. That's not morality. That's not ideologically pure. That's politics. But that's how the neocons have come to power and taken this country up to the brink and into wars and
Can you speak
death.
to that then?
Well, the point is
Can you speak to that then? The pure ideologues that think that we should never go against our principles, and then the fact that we might achieve more if we enter into the political realm and play the game in order to then inject our principles.
Yeah, well, their argument and the argument against it is that it's a slippery slope, and most people can't do it. They get corrupted by the process, and that's why we're in the mess we're in. But if I would trust anybody to do it, it would be Ron Paul or Rand Paul, because you know in their hearts what they believe, and you can see it. They live it. I mean, how many of the people watching right now are purists, but they pay their own union fees, or they take their own pension, even though it's unfair to other people in the company where they work, or they're in some other way compromised by the system themselves. They have to live. They have to make a living, and so they justify it. But Ron Paul didn't do it. He wouldn't do it. So it's a very unusual moment. It's a very unusual man, and that's what's built this movement. It's not perfect by any stretch of the means, and I have to tell you, we've only got a couple minutes. I hate to end on a negative thing, but I have to tell you something. One thing that slowed me down in understanding all of this was many years ago, I wrote a book for the Reagan campaign in 1980, interviewed President Reagan, then Governor Reagan, and wrote the book. And it became a bestseller, and I got a call from someone in Washington who flew me in and wanted me to ghostwrite books for him. And he was into all this conspiracy theories, and so he sat down. He wanted me to write this book, and we're going through it, and he's naming what would be in the different chapters. And he brought up something. I said, "Well, that's not true. I know that's not true. I know from working with President Reagan." And instead of defending it, instead of saying, well, yes, it is true, maybe you don't have the full story, instead of defending it, he said, who cares whether it's true? These books really sell. Boy, I tell you, that turned me off then and there. I was out. And that delayed, by many years, it delayed me understanding how the Federal Reserve works, how many of these things that are going on, why they're going on. So there are bad people everywhere. There are bad people at church, and there are bad people on TV, and there are bad people in our own houses and homes, and there are bad people in the liberty movement, the constitutional movement. And we need to look to Ron not only to help us, and to you teachers out there who are writing these books and studying this online. We need you to teach us, but we also need you to be good examples of human beings too, and be patient while we change everything, because to win this, we're going to have other people come over to our side, and we're going to do that easier if we're patient. We're almost done.
Sometimes we can be understanding.
I got one more question here from Corey. Go ahead, Corey, and then I got to get off. I got to do a radio show.
Yes. Will you and Ron Paul be speaking at Paul Fest? Is a common question that keeps coming up.
I have no idea. That's a million years away from this, from today. We got conventions coming up. We got the Iowa State Convention coming up. Just think of that after the Ames, Iowa cavalcade. Now, after all that time, finally, we're going to have the Iowa State GOP Convention and choose the delegates to Tampa. So, yeah, that's a long way off. I don't know yet, Corey. I haven't been invited, but I don't know what will happen there.
Okay, well,
listen.
Thank you. And I just, before you sign off, I just really want to thank Mark Boswell from the Evanar app. They've done an amazing job with this app.
Yes, and that's right. And there were thousands of people on it. Thank you for that. And I want to say something to all the people that have written in on Facebook, and you've written in questions, and I haven't answered them. I've got to do a radio show next, but tomorrow I'll get into some of those and start answering the ones that I missed. Usually I've been able to keep up with it. I wasn't this time, but I will do that. And I thank you for making your comments and adding to a rich discussion here by making your points too. And I'm going to enjoy those, and I'll read them in the next day or so, and respond to as many of them as I can. In Israel, thank you very much, and the wonderful people there at Ron Paul Flicks for joining us tonight, and for all the people that subscribe to your great network. You're doing a great work. Thank you. And Corey Burkert, thank you very much. Good night, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye. Thanks, Israel. And here we go. Let me see. How can I find the turn-off button? Mike Mann, what radio show? What radio show am I on next? I don't know. They're going to call here. I'll try to type it in. Here as soon as I find out. When I get on the radio, I'll ask them what it is, and then I'll type it in. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good night.